Okay, let's welcome our audience. Welcome to the Work Comp Weekly. I am Dan Moyer, your host, and directly across from me,
Hey everybody, it's Frank Smithson here.
fabulous Frank.
That's me.
Yeah, how are you, Frank?
Doing good.
Yeah,
Doing good. Life is busy. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Yeah, life is busy as well.
How about words of wisdom? Anything for us?
Words of wisdom. Okay, we've been talking about this idea of the AI taking our jobs, and
It took our jobs.
and universal basic income, and it's something that I you and I talked about. But what I wanted to point out is I feel like the idea of a craftsman and the craftsman economy, when we talk about a renaissance, I think that's what I think of. That's what I think of as kind of going to move. If you think about like the craft beer industry, for example,
Sure. Which is starting to fail, by the way.
Maybe it had, its peak and maybe it's stabilizing. Yeah. But if you just think about prior to that, I mean, I was a 90s kid, right? So
yeah.
I was drinking, Bud Light, Miller Lite.
And Sierra Nevada was like the coolest beer ever because it was kind of craft.
Yeah.
Right.
And it made my stomach hurt, so I didn't drink it.
Oh, really? Pale ale?
Yeah.
All right.
Whatever. But point being, I'm just like, I think that's going to be the evolution of all things.
I hope so.
Big box stores, I think they've had their peak. I think they're going to go down. Think of Etsy. Think of those types of things. We want things I think we want things with better craftsmanship.
That's fair. Etsy is not that, if you ask me.
It depends on where you look.
Yeah, there's so much of the just cookie cutter stuff now on Etsy. When it first came out,
I think you just got to look harder.
That's the thing. I don't want to have to look hard. Give me an Etsy where it really is all handmade stuff, and I'm down.
But that's a good point. If that's a good point. So you have this Etsy as a marketplace for craft. Think what the next evolution is going to be. It's going to be down the street. You're going to have, because our jobs are taken, we're going to go carve chess pieces, and have a main street again, maybe.
That would be great.
You know what I mean?
More community.
Yeah.
Bring that back. There's things that we can do.
So
I'm feeling you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Glad.
I got some news tidbits here for you.
Let's do it.
So, let's see here. This article on the radiology, where did that come from, Dan?
This is Work Comp Central.
Work Comp Central. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Allstate Insurance Company provides automobile insurance coverage in California. Yep. It filed suit against two groups of professional medical corporations, radiologists, a medical management company, and an individual named Sitar Mir. Mm-hmm. And the complaint alleged that Mir, who is not a physician, founded and controlled Discovery Radiology Physicians. Documents filed with the California Secretary of State and Medical Board of California allegedly described the firm as a diagnostic radiology practice, but Allstate claims Discovery did not administer or interpret magnetic resonance imaging scans, MRIs. Instead, according to Allstate, Discovery solicited patients and referred them to facilities and radiologists who had agreed to share some payment for services with Mir.
Yeah.
And it's pretty significant markup. The carrier is basically saying they falsely included grossly inflated fees for services that would not have paid. They would not have paid for had it known the false statements and fraudulent markups. Mir typically charges $1,750 for MRI services, and the carrier alleges the $1,500 markup of charges was intended to generate enormous profit for Mir and to fraudulently increase the value of the claim for personal injury made on behalf of claimants by referring attorneys.
Yeah. Interesting story because this got to the California Appellate Court, who reinstated the fraud claim. So it seems like it got denied. The fraud claim got denied. And when it talks about being demurred, and we're not experts particularly, we're not attorneys particularly. So if you have comments on this, we'd like to hear. So this is some multi-level stuff. They're going after these guys. But these are really great questions and I think this is an active case. So the Court of Appeal, 2nd District, California, has these 4 questions. Are the business models alleged in the Allstate complaints illegal? If the alleged business models are unlawful, do they give rise to cause of action under the IFPA or UCL? Do the complaints plead fraud with sufficient particularity? Does the discovery action adequately allege delayed discovery to survive demur on statute of limitations grounds? So this is complicated but interesting, that it's got several levels that this began at, and now it's getting some news.
Yeah, we'll follow it and definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Please comment. Next one, this is something that I think I might bring up as a main topic down the road, so I'm really looking for some input from the attorneys. It's basically the health of California. And so there's an article from the New York Times. Let me read this. Politically, California's influence could shrink while other states like Texas and Florida grow. California already lost a congressional district for the first time in its history after the 2020 census and could eventually lose more. And this is because of the people exiting, right? A dearth of young people and immigrants also will mean less consumer spending and a smaller labor force, threatening the dynamism. Sorry, let me read that again. A dearth of young people and immigrants also will mean less consumer spending and a smaller labor force, threatening the dynamism that has fueled California's growth for decades. California is already in a constant state of bumping up against its boundaries. The dramatic swings between flood and drought and fires, an intractable homeless crisis that has increased tensions in many cities, the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. Even Hollywood has lost its luster as the ongoing strikes reveal deep problems from the movie industry in a digital era. We had a podcast on that last time. So I'm curious, from the work comp world, if we have this flood, like, how is that changing the work that you do? Maybe you specialize in tech and now tech's kind of moving out of California, or even, farm workers. How is that impacting you if there's, loss of population? I'm curious what it's going to do. And is it going to ever stop? There's some of the articles I'm looking at, they're talking about this thing like continuing on for decades. So,
and for not a political statement, but there's a super majority at the state level, and that is just recipe for lack of balance. You have an opinion that is very, and politicians are for lack of a better term, trained to hold a specific topic and hold it very tightly, right? So you have a super majority at the state, and balance is impossible in that area.
One thing that we can say for sure is that change needs to happen, and I think it's gonna happen. I guess the question is, can California keep up with all the changes that are happening in the world?
And what would change to bring people back or keep people here?
I mean, you're trying to go back to an old way. What I'm suggesting is that may not be the case anymore.
Or a new way.
The idea of, that's what we need to figure out. How do we adapt to the new way, right? The remote work, the reduction of the labor force.
Yeah. UBI.
Yeah. How socialist of you.
I just think it's inevitable. Universal health care. It's not very.
Okay. So now you got universal health care. We've got a whole nother topic: workers' compensation, universal health care. Those are pretty.
I don't.
At odds.
I'm not making a statement for or against it. I just think it's absolutely inevitable that there's going to be universal health care and universal basic income. Universal health care, just because the cost is out of control. And UBI because automation.
It seems like you either have that or you have more homelessness. I'm sure there's other solutions out there. Be curious to hear what people's thoughts are.
Yeah, we don't mean to be too doomsday.
I do.
It's kind of fun. People suffering though, so it.
Yeah.
I think it's harder to come back. We have a family that we know that moved to Tennessee, and they can't come back because of the cost. They don't like it there.
Yeah, once you leave, getting back is a really difficult thing to do. That's been the case even when I was young. I remember thinking the same thing. Like, do well in California, you can live anywhere in the world is the way we thought about it. Yeah. But once you move out, getting back is, a lot more difficult.
For sure. So our main story. Mm-hmm. This is a Daisy News Team article from August 25th. Sedgwick Roundup, TPA remains non-compliant.
Oh, you don't say.
So we don't cover Daisy Bill probably enough. They are most of their clients are doctors in the system, and there is a mandate that the insurance companies accept electronic billing, and then they have to respond electronically if they accept that. Mm-hmm. So what's happening here, and this is all over, this is rampant throughout the entire department, throughout workers' compensation. So Sedgwick has been non-compliant in responding with EORs. So again, they're required to respond with EORs. Their non-compliance rate is 23% in 2023 so far. So, this is just
a quarter of what you do is essentially fraudulent.
Yep.
It's got to be proved that way, right?
That's what they're saying. That's what Sedgwick is saying. So
is it any surprise to you, based on your history of working with insurance companies?
Not at all. Not at all. At one point, we had a non-pay rate of 50%. It was awful. Mm-hmm. It was awful. I can't even tell you how bad it was, personally, but just for Gemini, for employees, we got into a very stagnant state because of that.
Yeah, that's probably a lot of what put the bad taste of insurance companies in my brain. Mm-hmm. This, it felt like everything they do is about delay and deny and try to not pay.
Yeah. Daisy Bill says, there's just some quotes, creating an environment that's unbelievably permissive for claims administrators, unbelievably chaotic for providers, and often unnavigable for injured workers.
It's a good trifecta.
Can you argue against that? Is there any argument against that?
I don't believe so. I'd like to hear the defense's side and see what they have to say about that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're living in it, and the accountability is not there.
Where is the accountability? No entity in our database more consistently violates California laws and regulations, making it more difficult for providers to treat injured workers. What's the effect on the court as well?
Was there comments from Sedgwick back? Like, did they comment? They're just like crickets on this one.
Yeah, no, they don't. They don't like to play ball.
Like, this is like serious accusation and data to back it up. I'm wondering if this is going to take hold and something will actually change.
Yeah, they quote Daisy Bill quotes that they've reported on this 7 times in the last year and a half on this. So the things that come to my mind are, we've talked about this before. What are the angles? Why is this important? To me, there's just a clear lack of accountability on the state's part. They've been chronically underfunded. The state is chronically, the department is underfunded. They don't have the resources to do the best job that they possibly can, and they're making it worse by not holding accountability. Now there's more DORs at the court, clogging up the court system with this type of stuff. I'm a big proponent of 5814.6. Mm-hmm. So this is I'm challenging. I want somebody, I don't know, to tell me that I'm just completely crazy about this, but 5814.6, any employer or insurer that knowingly violates 5814 with a frequency that indicates a general business practice is liable for administrative penalties. And those administrative penalties are up to $400,000 imposed by
AD,
the administrative director, and deposited into the return to work fund established. And so the AD has the red pen here.
So I'd be curious, is it possible that the people, not necessarily the courts, the people can go after these companies to change behavior? Like, is that what it's going to take?
You could, you could have, you know what? I think that's very legitimate. There could be a civil claim against the state for not holding the insurance companies.
So we had to take a couple actions against, I'll call them undisclosed insurance companies.
Yeah.
And we used 5814.6 to some degree.
We used terminology we used bad faith terminology.
Bad faith terminology, but the penalties, right, the P&I that could come from the lawsuit, I'm wondering if that was like a good enough of a scare tactic to get them to say, okay, let's move towards settlement, right?
Yeah, this company, we filed a consolidation petition several years ago, in 1819, against a payer that was paying us 20 cents on the dollar.
Ridiculous.
20 cents on the dollar this particular payer was paying us. And I said, no more. I found me an attorney that likes to fight, and we consolidated. The laws have changed, unfortunately. So they responded. Let me say the industry responded to make that more difficult. So we
Interesting.
filed a consolidation petition. It resulted in a settlement and
a change of behavior.
Which is in that
really
carrier.
what we need. I mean, it would be great to have the courts take on, but if they're so underfunded, like how does any of this get resolved?
I don't know. I wonder why.
There's got to be large doctor groups out there that if they're getting these issues with Sedgwick, obviously they're making a stink and a complaint about it, but how do they take it to the next step to actually create change?
Yeah. I was talking to somebody over the weekend about just the state of California and working for the state. And, I've worked with a few people in our industry at the state level. And man, I think that, and then, just in and around the Sacramento area that we're in, you hear, state workers just, they lack mission. We were talking about how, and this guy that I was talking to, he works with the state too. And he sees like clearly people coming from, for example, the military, and they think they're coming into a similar situation to work for the state.
Okay.
And I told him, I said, the military, you have a mission. It's really clear what your mission is.
Yeah.
Really clear. Like, we get attacked, we defend ourselves. That's just, you're a fighter. You're in the military, you're a fighter. That's your basic, mission. What's the mission of the state? I'm curious.
I mean, do you want me to be sarcastic? Because I can respond.
But I think that's the question. That's the problem. That question underscores the problem. Is that this? If you work for the state, what's your mission? Is it to? I'm sure it's not. But the sarcastic answer is it to make as many people miserable as you possibly can. I mean, I don't think that's the mission. But they can't do their job unless they're given the right tools. We talked about this just prior to this podcast.
Talked about this on multiple podcasts.
But they fund the military. We're just using it on a national level, right? They have no problem funding defense, innovation for defense. Yet we have several innovations in this world that are not funded by the state because of whatever reason. We were talking about oil, or we were talking about energy and hydrogen production.
This reminds me of, this is an old topic. The amount of money that was spent on the Iraq war, we could have demolished every single school, K through higher education in the United States to the ground, every single one, and rebuilt them all with the biggest, best technology ever.
Yeah.
And where would that have got us? How would that have changed compared to putting all the money into fighting?
How would that have influenced the rest of the world?
Exactly.
You know, the Iraqis, any other terrorist state. I mean, to me, the better we are, per se, for lack of a better term, the more altruistic and the more people focused that we are, it raises the level of other nations. And I feel that as in a business, you know, if we at Gemini, if we're doing a good job in our industry, that it's going to raise the game for the rest of the competitors and the rest of the companies in our industry.
So I think if you were to ask the people at the courts, at the state, you know, what their thoughts are, they probably would talk to you in terms of altruism. Mm-hmm. But how is it that the decisions and the things that they do don't manifest to actually helping? I mean, even if you think of like, oh, we're passing these new laws to do this, but then you don't have anything to back it up with accountability.
You can be as altruistic as you want, but if you're having to work 80 hours a week or 60 hours a week, you're salaried and you have to work, you're burnt out. You don't have a mission.
Is that what's happening?
Yeah, it's definitely underfunded, employee wise, for sure. Hard to they have always had a difficult time hiring.
Is it because, I mean, is it the bureaucracy that makes it so the current amount of people are in that situation? Remove some bureaucracy, make things a little bit cleaner. I mean, I think all I'm suggesting is there's probably a depth to this that who knows how to correct it.
But there's people that have the red pen.
Sure.
And to me,
you want to call those people out?
To me,
specifics that you're thinking of?
I'm just, you know, I'm not sitting in their shoes. I'm not sitting in their shoes. So I can't, you know, I can only look from an outsider perspective as a pundit.
Sure.
But is there a time to kind of stand up? Is there a time you're the red pen guy and you got to make a stand, you know?
So what about CAW? What have they done lately? Where are they at? Do they have the resource themselves, the power to start creating change? I mean, I guess CAW doesn't necessarily represent the medical providers, but if it's a whole system and we recognize where there's problems, you know, you bring up the medical providers that can help the attorneys. It's like the community, right? The industry itself.
Yeah. That's a good question. It's probably something we'll have to leave for our audience to answer. Yeah. I'm curious what advocacy is going on.
What's the other medical one?
CSIMs.
CSIMs. And that's recently gone through some changes and they're like growing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd definitely like to hear their input on this too.
Yeah. I assume we have some of them listening, so
I hope so.
I'd love to get their input.
Sweet.
All right. Well, let's stop there. Let's get ask again for our audience. Let's
like, subscribe, all of the above.
Yep. Right on. Thanks, Frank.
Appreciate it.
See ya.